Hey, early risers, thanks for joining me super early, earlier than usual for me. Yeah, I think Handshake is really relevant for December since we have plenty of crypto decentralization related projects, but they're all built on names that are rented. Um, but shout out to these guys, they're the ones that really made this happen, got me here to talk. Yeah, so we have all these decentralization-focused projects that all are building on rented domain names. So what I mean by that is the only way to actually own a domain name is by owning the top-level domain, the thing at the end, the domain extension, right? So for example, if you think about .com, VeriSign's the company that owns .com. That's why they can rent it. That's why they can sell it out to Google.com, Facebook.com, whatnot. They are the owners, right? So to take away, the only way to own a name is to own the top-level domain. But instead, we're all stuck renting them. And to kind of understand why the system is the way it is, it's helpful to just step back to see how the actual domain name system works as a whole. So when you visit a website like google.com, your browser first consults something called the root. The root will give it instructions to get to .com. .com will tell it how to get to google.com, and then google.com will serve its website. If that's a little kind of hectic, confusing for you, that's okay. Here's an equally accurate depiction of DNS. Ah, jeez. So the takeaway is everything begins at the root. That's the first thing. You can think of the root like a spreadsheet. Column A of that spreadsheet is .com, .net, .org, .tv here. And then column B of the spreadsheet are the servers that those top-level domains actually point to. Right? So the very first step is to consult that root zone file. And that root zone file is controlled by one organization called ICANN. So if you wanted to get your own top-level domain, let's say .eth Denver, the process is you go to ICANN and you say, hello, ICANN, I would like .eth Denver. And then they ask you to fill out an application. You pay an application fee of $185,000. So this applications are closed right now, so even if you had the money, you can't get one. But last time they were open, they were $185,000 to apply. So that is not the cost to get a top-level domain, right? That is the cost for ICANN to tell you yes or no, you're allowed to have one. And then it takes a couple years, something like $10 million to get the actual top-level domain set up. So that's where Handshake comes in. So Handshake, we're a decentralized blockchain layer 1 protocol, and we just seek, it's very simple, we just seek to decentralize or shift control of that root zone file away from ICANN and onto a decentralized blockchain that no one controls. So instead of going through this application process where there's this gatekeeper, for Handshake domains, you get Handshake top-level domains just through auctions. So highest bidder wins the name, and that's really it. Something helpful to consider when evaluating how decentralized a naming system is just following the money. For example, asking yourself who dictates the price of each name. In the case of Handshake, it's market-driven, right? Each name, the value is determined by an auction. And then who gets paid? The really cool thing about Handshake is the winning bids do not get paid to anyone. So there is no recipient of the bids when you get a name. It just gets burned. So it decreases the total supply of the coins. Maybe there's a small deflationary effect. Yeah. Cool. So what can you actually do with the Handshake name? Small demo. So I own .JohnnyWoo, which means, so I own .JohnnyWoo, which means I can have a homepage set up at home.johnnywoo. I know we're zoomed in here. If I switch this to Twitter, then that would just redirect you to my Twitter page. So a human readable redirect, right? But my favorite part of using Handshake names is because I own the top-level domain, I don't even need the dot anymore. I can just have a website that just lives at JohnnyWoo. So that's http://JohnnyWoo. That's my website. So it's like a decentralized link tree. This thing's pretty cool. The website itself is stored on Skynet. So you have decentralized storage paired with decentralized naming for a fully decentralized website, right? And then one more use case is I keep calling them Handshake names and not just Handshake domain names because domain names are one of its use cases. This right here is a wiki page that's created by our community members. You'll notice there's no edit button here. In order to edit the page, you just need to own a Handshake name and then just log in with it. So I'll log in with the name that I just showed, Johnny Woo. Log in, yes, that is my name. So what's happening in the background is it's checking a TXT record that's set on my Handshake name. And then you'll see I'm logged in as Johnny now. I can edit the page as well. So I've just logged in with my Handshake name. Cool. Cool. If you've been following along on your own phone, then you might have attempted to actually, shoot. Sorry, I gotta connect the remote. If you've been following along, then you might have attempted to visit one of the websites that I showed, like home.johnnywoo, and you realized you couldn't because all these names do live on a blockchain that your browser probably doesn't know exists. You have to do something to tell your browser how to actually get there. The easiest way to do so is this thing called HNS.2. So if I go to, you can do this right now on your own phone. If you go to hns.to. That's this website. If my internet is, and then up at the top where it says enter a Handshake name, you can just enter Johnny Woo, the name that I just showed. JohnnyWoo.hns.2. And my internet is not liking me. All right, anyways, point is, if you use hns.2, you can visit Handshake websites. But the one thing that really has Handshake stands out from is this thing I call level 2 resolution. Essentially, you get the same trustless resolution benefits of running a full node without needing to run a full node, which is super resource intensive, right? So it's going to be the only naming protocol with this. What I mean is right now, when you visit google.com, which is the example I've been using, you probably rely on your internet service provider to serve you the proper records, right? Like, you are not locally resolving those names. You're trusting a third party to hand you the proper records. If you're running an SPV resolver, then that means you yourself are going to the Handshake public blockchain, you're looking at the records yourself, and then you're taking yourself to wherever it goes, right? So more private because there's no intermediary that can see literally every domain name that you're visiting, which is why there's all these issues with ISPs and why VPNs are so popular now. Cool. So yeah, Handshake's the only naming protocol with this, and how resource unintensive it is, just for an illustration, Bob extension, I believe they just rolled this out. So a browser extension can locally, trustlessly resolve Handshake names, which is pretty cool. This is just a quick example, like the user experience of using a Handshake name from a developer's point of view. If you just compare the records, the top is your traditional ICANN domains, the bottom is your Handshake domains. This is for setting up a decentralized website on IPFS, and you'll see that the instructions are nearly identical. Because at the end of the day, Handshake is just DNS. It's not trying to reinvent anything. It does one thing, it decentralizes the root of the DNS zone, but it's still just DNS. Cool, so some real live use cases. That's not just my personal use case. Library Genesis, they're a pirating website for academic papers. So you can imagine why they might want an uncensorable domain name that won't get taken down because they have to deal with that all the time. So now they're just always going to be available at Library Genesis. And notice the .list domain, so pretty cool. But it's not just for illicit use cases either. So Argo, they call themselves like Vercel for decentralized web. Essentially, they make it really easy to deploy stuff, websites, apps onto the D-Web or other decentralized projects. They actually had their domain taken down by GoDaddy a couple months ago. And the reason for the takedown request was email spam. But it's ridiculous because their domain name literally did not have an MX record. So you need an MX record to actually have an email address to send email from. So they literally did not have an email, but they still had their domain taken down for like email spam. And they don't do anything like sketchy at all, right? They couldn't get the name back, so that prompted them to set up on Handshake, so now they're always going to be available here. Yeah, we've spoken to like industry insiders at GoDaddy and such, and the domain takedown requests have just been like skyrocketing these past years. And I think it'll be especially relevant for just the crypto world. Yeah. Another use case, Audius. They're Decentralized Spotify. What they've done is they own .audius on Handshake, and they've given branded second-level domains or subdomains for all their users. So if you have a profile on Audius, then you also get your profile name .audius, branded domains. So pie in the sky idea, if you combine this concept with Handshake logins that I introduced earlier, then you can imagine having a community platform where your community members log in with your branded name, right? So I might be johnny.ethdenver, and I log into my ethdenver profile. Yeah. And then you combine that with an actual like revenue model where you're selling those second level domains, and now you're generating revenue through your branded names that serve as logins. And then the final use case is people are really into emojis. And I think it makes sense for Handshake names because if you combine it with the dotless domain stuff, then you can have a website that literally just lives at an emoji, right? So a really cool use case would be if someone like Uniswap got the unicorn emoji and they set up their website the unicorn emoji. Great, so this is kind of what we're focused on moving forward. Coin listings, everyone's focused on that. Browser adoption, you can imagine, I mentioned that your browsers don't natively resolve Handshake, so you need to do something to tell it how to actually get there. So native browser adoption would be huge. That means you don't need to do anything extra. You just use your browser and you can access Handshake names. So Opera just committed to integrating Handshake, so that'll be really exciting to see this year. And then I think what's actually most important is onboarding reputable D-Web, Web3 projects onto their decentralized Handshake name. So then they're actually decentralized, right? Like the very first layer of the internet that your end user interacts with is your domain name. So if your domain name gets taken down, it's going to be very, very hard for them to actually get to your website, not to mention DNS attacks and whatnot as well. Yeah, so if you really care about decentralization, our community exists to help you get set up. So we can help you get your name, help you get set up on it. Cool, so the main takeaway, Handshake names, the only way to own a domain name is by owning the top level domain. Handshake names are top level domains that you can own. They're uncensorable, they're secure, and they're private. Cool. I mentioned DNS security, but that's like another 15 minutes. But they're very real. DNS is like a 40-year-old technology, but attacks are very, very modern. And Handshake can just completely revolutionize the internet security system by replacing the certificate authority system. Certificate authorities are ridiculous. If you want to chat more, I'm happy to rant about that. And we're hiring. So if you know Node.js or Go, then you're pretty much a perfect fit. Node.js is the only actual requirement. Here's how you can contact us and me. Yeah, that's everything.